be delighted to oblige me." "But they declare they have no money," said Fogg. "No money! Pshaw!" exclaimed Nicholas. "An idle excuse. They have got chests full. Would I had all Roger Nowell's gold, I should not require another supply for years. But, 'sdeath, I will not trouble myself for a paltry £30." "If I might venture to suggest, squire, while you are about it, I would ask for £100, or even 200 or 300," said Fogg. "Your friends will think all the better of you, and feel more satisfied you intend to repay them." "Do you think so?" cried Nicholas. "Then, by Plutus, it shall be £300. 300 at interest. Dick will have to borrow the amount to lend it to me, but no matter, he'll easily obtain it. Hark ye, Fogg, while you are at Middleton, endeavour to ascertain whether anything has been arranged about the marriage of a certain young lady to a certain young gentleman. I am curious to know the precise state of affairs in that quarter." "I will arrive at the truth, if possible, squire," replied Fogg; "but I should scarcely think Sir Richard would assent to his son's union with the daughter of a notorious witch." "Sir Richard's son is scarcely likely to ask Sir Richard's consent," said Nicholas; "and as to Mistress Nutter, though heavy charges have been brought against her, nothing has been proved, for you know she escaped, or rather was rescued, on her way to Lancaster Castle." "I am fully aware of it, squire," replied Fogg, "and I more than suspect a worthy friend of mine had a hand in her deliverance, and could tell where to find her, if needful. But that's neither here nor there. The lady is quite innocent, I dare say. Indeed, I am quite sure of it, since you espouse her cause so warmly. But the world is malicious, and strange things are reported of her." "Heed not the world, Fogg," rejoined Nicholas. "The world speaks well of no man, be his deserts what they may. The world says that I waste my estate in wine, women, and horseflesh; that I spend time in pleasures which might be profitably employed; that I neglect my wife, forget my religious observances, am on horseback when I should be afoot, at the alehouse when I should be at home, and at a marriage when I should be at a funeral, shooting when I should be keeping my books. In short, it has not a good word to say for me. And as for thee, Fogg, it says thou art an idle, good for nothing fellow; or if thou art good for aught, it is only for something that leads to evil. It says thou drinkest prodigiously, liest confoundedly, and swearest most profanely, and that thou art evermore ready to go to the alehouse and church, and that none of the girls can scape thee. Nay, the slanderers even go so far as to assert that thou would not hesitate to say 'stand and deliver' to a true man on the highway. That's what the world says of thee. Oh, but hang it, never look chapfallen, man. Let us go to the stables, and then we will in to breakfast, after which we will proceed to the Ribble, and spear the old otter." A fine old manorial residence was Downham, and beautifully situated, as has been shown, on a woody eminence to the north of Pendle Hill. It was of great antiquity, and first came into the possession of the Assheton family in 1558. Considerable additions had been made to it by its present owner, Nicholas, and the outlay necessarily required, combined with his lavish expenditure, had contributed to embarrass him. The stables were large and full of horses, the kennels on the same scale, and equally well supplied with hounds, and there was a princely retinue of servants in the yard, grooms, keepers, falconers, huntsmen, and their assistants, to say nothing of their fellows within doors. In short, if it had been your fortune to accompany the squire and his friend round the premises, if you had walked through the stables and counted the horses, if you had viewed the kennels and examined the various hounds, the great Lancashire dogs, tall, shaggy, and heavy, a race now extinct; the Worcestershire hounds, then also in much repute; the greyhounds, the harriers, the beagles, the lurchers, and, lastly, the verminers, or, as we should call them, the terriers, if you had seen all these, you would not have wondered that money was scarce with him. Still further would your surprise at such a consequence have diminished if you had gone on to the falconry, and seen on the perches the goshawk and her tercel, the sparrowhawk and her musket, under the care of the ostricher, and further on the falcon gentle, the gerfalcon, the lanner, the merlin, and the hobby, all of which were attended to by a head falconer. It would have done you good to hear Nicholas inquiring from his men if they had set out their birds this morning and weathered them. if they had mummy powder in readiness, then esteemed a sovereign remedy. If the fures, hoods, jesses, buets, and all the other needful furniture were in good order, and if the meat were sweet and wholesome, you might next have followed him to the pens where the fighting cocks were kept, and where you would have found another source of expense in the cockmaster, Tom Shaw, a knave who not only got high wages from his master, but understood so well the dieting of his birds, that he could make them win or lose a battle as he thought proper. Here again Nicholas had much to say, and was in raptures with one cock, which he told Fogg he would back to any amount, utterly unconscious of a significant look that passed between his friend and the cockmaster. "Look at him," cried the squire, "how proud and erect he stands. His head is as small as that of a sparrow hawk, his eye large and quick, his body thick, his legs strong in the beam, and his spurs long, rough, and sharp. That's the bird for me. I will take him over to the cockpit at Prescot next week, and match him against any bird Sir John Talbot or my cousin Braddyll can bring." "And yo'n win, squoire," replied the cockmaster. "I've been feeding him these 5 weeks, and he'll be in rare condition then, and win a failure. You may lay what you like upon him," he added, with a sly wink at Fogg. "You may win the £30 you want," observed the latter, in a low tone to the squire. "Or mayhap lose it," replied Nicholas. "I shall not risk so much unless I get the 300 from Dick Assheton. I've been unlucky of late. You beat me constantly at tables now, Fogg, and when I first knew you this was not wont to be the case. Nay, never make excuses, man. You cannot help it. Let's in to breakfast." With this he proceeded towards the house, followed by Fogg and a couple of large Lancashire hounds, and entering at the back of the premises, made his way through the scullery into the kitchen. Here there were plentiful evidences of the hospitality, not to say profusion, reigning throughout the mansion. An open door showed a larder stocked with all kinds of provisions, and before the fire joints of meat and poultry were roasting. Pies were baking in the oven, and over the flames in the chimney was suspended a black pot, large enough for a witch's cauldron. The cook was busied in preparing for the gridiron some freshly caught trout, intended for the squire's own breakfast, and the kitchen maid was toasting oat cakes, of which there was a large supply in the bread flake depending from the ceiling. Casting a look round, and exchanging a few words with the cook, Nicholas moved on, still followed by Fogg and the hounds, and tracking along the stone passage, entered the great hall. Here the same disorder and irregularity prevailed as in his own character and conduct. All was litter and confusion. Around the walls were hung breastplates and buff coats, morions, shields, and two-handed swords, but they were half hidden by fishing nets, fowling nets, dogs' collars, saddles and bridles, housing, crossbows, longbows, quivers, baldricks, horns, spears, guns, and every other implement then used in the sports of the river or the field. The floor was in an equal state of disorder. The rushes were filled with half gnawed bones, brought thither by the hounds, and in one corner, on a mat, was a favourite spaniel and her whelps. The squire, however, was happily insensible to the condition of the chamber, and looked around it with an air of satisfaction, as if he thought it the perfection of comfort. A table was spread for breakfast, near a window looking out upon the lawn, and 2 covers only were laid, for Mistress Nicholas Assheton did not make her appearance at this early hour. And now was exhibited one of those strange contradictions of which the squire's character was composed. Kneeling down by the side of the table, and without noticing the mocking expression of Fogg's countenance as he followed his example, Nicholas prayed loudly and fervently for upwards of 10 minutes, after which he arose and gave a shout which proved that his lungs were unimpaired, and not only roused the whole house, but set all the dogs barking. Presently a couple of serving men answered this lusty summons, and the table was covered with good and substantial dishes, which he and his companion attacked with a vigour such as only the most valiant trencherman can display. Already has it been remarked that a breakfast at the period in question resembled a modern dinner, and better proof could not have been afforded of the correctness of the description than the meal under discussion, which comprised fish, flesh, and fowl, boiled, broiled, and roast, together with strong ale and sack. After an hour thus agreeably employed, and while they were still seated, Though breakfast had pretty nearly come to an